Good morning, everyone. I'm Scott McGrew. As you know, there's a disagreement in the Pentagon whether a Silicon Valley company, Anthropic, can set rules for the military over what Claude AI is allowed to do. Anthropic says don't use it for autonomous weapons. Don't use it to surveil Americans. The Pentagon says we weren't going to. But you shouldn't be able to tell us what to do. No other military contractor gets that right. What would be best is for Congress to set down some rules for AI companies and soldiers that they can follow. This comes for all technology, really. I think we have found the absolute best expert to explain why Congress has not done that. Brad Carson is a former member of Congress. He is a former Army lawyer, and he's a former Undersecretary of Defense. He's now the president for Americans for Responsible Innovation. Good morning, Brad. Before we get into policy, what is your organization? Who funds it? And exactly what are you trying to change?
Sure. The organization I lead is called Americans for Responsible Innovation. We receive no corporate funding at all. We're all funded by philanthropies or family offices from people who believe that we need to have reasonable guardrails around artificial intelligence, that it has incredible promise, but also some peril, and we need to address both.
So getting to some of these issues, it sounds like most Americans and a lot of lawmakers are fully opposed to autonomous systems, by meaning systems that can make a kill decision on their own. Are we in a race sort of to build this before we know we should build it?
I think, in fact, we are. And while the American people and many members of Congress might oppose autonomous weapons, increasingly in our national security establishment, people of both parties are generally for it. And the idea being that we have the best autonomous weapons in the world, our enemies will strive to develop them themselves, and we should be the first to achieve them. And so there is a bit of an arms race, if you will, one the Americans now lead, that leads us to kind of mostly strongly support them within the corridors of the Pentagon itself, if not without.
What kind of AI is already being used by the military, and is it experimental or actually operational?
I think it's quite operational. So maybe a decade ago, they started Project Maven. Google originally had that contract, but after it became well known, many Google employees objected and Google pulled out. That was picked up by Palantir. So today, Palantir is kind of the major AI vendor, if you will, and they use Claude as part of it, but Claude is just a very small part of it, that Claude being made by Anthropic. They integrate all forms of intelligence, from what they're hearing in phone calls or what drones are picking up in video footage, human intelligence reports, and assimilate that into a common operating picture where people can target, people can understand the battlefield. So Palantir is probably the most important AI technology or vendor that's being used by the Pentagon.
And you can see how valuable that would be, because, I mean, there have been all kinds of examples of we didn't detect the pattern, whether that's Pearl Harbor or 9/11. There was a pattern there, but there were just too many signals and too many people trying to who were left out of the loop, where an AI would say, hey, I think I got something here.
No, that's exactly right. That's a great task for AI, to assimilate, terabytes of data, something that no human analyst could ever really get over, and identify kind of the wheat from the chaff. And by all accounts, the Palantir technology is terrific at what it does. And so the American military is increasingly reliant upon it.
I think the kill, no kill thing is an interesting question for an autonomous weapon, because there are shades of gray there. You can imagine a system that actually stops a strike, that says that's a friendly aircraft and aborts the missile mid-flight. That's Absolutely. A no-kill decision.
Absolutely. Or you can imagine imagine cybersecurity. That probably has to be automated because it happens at microsecond levels. You have to be responding to threats. No human could intervene there. So there's going to be some automation. I think really the question is whether in kinetic attacks that kill other people, whether you should have a human in the loop. That's really what the debate is. Increasingly, many military officials are saying a human on the loop or a human behind the loop. They use these terms, but getting the human out of the loop is something that I personally find quite dangerous and really underlies the dispute between Anthropic and the Department of War.
Yeah. I think most Americans agree. I think most members of Congress agree. You've been inside the Pentagon. They'd be okay with guardrails, not but from Anthropic. I get that argument that the Pentagon makes, but from Congress, who sets laws for the United States and the United States military.
They would definitely take any laws from Congress and abide by them. The Pentagon is not a rogue organization. But I would tell you that most people in the Pentagon who are thinking about future warfighting probably have an enthusiasm for autonomous weapons that may not be shared by the broader American public.
Why has Congress been so slow here?
I think a couple of things. There's a great deference to the Pentagon when it comes to organizing our military. And second, these questions about AI, autonomy, highly technical aspects of the military, they're pretty obscure, right? They often operate in the shadows. And so it's very hard for Congress to even know how the military is thinking about it, how they're deploying it. And then if they actually want to regulate it, so they're very deferential to the warfighters themselves. And so they're very, they stay away from that a lot of times.
And finally, you've been warning for a while about the tension between Silicon Valley and the military. What does that look like from now? And does it get better or worse from here?
I think there's going to be increasing tension. To Silicon Valley's great credit, as well as the Pentagon, there's been more integration over the last few years than probably in all of American history, right? New companies like Anduril, Palantir sprouting up to challenge existing defense contractors. That's all for the good. But AI is going to bring some serious challenges to us as well. And the American people and Congress, their representatives, need to step in to make sure that the military doesn't misuse it in some way.
Well, Brad, I appreciate your expertise, and there is a lot of it there. Brad Carson is the president for Americans for Responsible Innovation. We'll be back in just a minute.